try and dim that light.
True.
But I think that's part of the journey as well, is to be able to understand that this is how the world works, to be able to stand up for yourself and make sure that you can continue on that journey, because if it feels right, it's something that you have to continue doing.
Yeah.
Okay? And it doesn't mean it's always going to be easy.
No.
So this is where the story of Smart Communities started. I started an initiative in my community just to make my home safer. I live in a complex. I wanted to make the complex safer as well. And whilst we were doing that there, we started identifying where the issues are in the wider community. So then we said, okay, how do we take this to the streets? How do we get the neighbors involved? Because if I'm going to be a victim of crime, you can be a victim of crime, you can be a victim of crime.
True.
But if we stand together, it creates less opportunity for criminals to take action. And one of the big theories that we use in smart communities is the whole idea behind broken glass theory. Okay? So broken glass theory says take care of the small things. Make sure your street is clean. Make sure that there's no graffiti. Make sure that you pick up litter when you see it. Cut your lawn. Paint an area where there's graffiti. Whatever the case is, start really, really small. Don't try and change the country. Don't try and change the city. Just change your home, change your community around you, change your street. And then from there, you find that people appreciate what you're doing. And they try to motivate. They might give you money. They might give you support. They might come out and do a patrol with you.
True.
And it builds momentum from there. Okay, so the important thing is to start the journey with yourself, start it small, and the journey will unfold. Okay, so that's really where Smart Community started. So it started on my street. We started a street organization to keep the street safe. I met my then business partner probably about 10 years ago, and an amazing individual by the name of Dan Hunt. And Dan was keeping a green space that we live on clean. Okay, retired individual, about 20 years older than me. And he wanted to just have a good place where he can look out to, enjoy his retirement. So he started keeping the area outside of his home clean. Then he found that there was bushes that were too big, that there was an extended area that needed to be cleaned up. So when he was transporting some of the waste to the local dump, he made friends with the community that services the dump. So the guys that are unemployed, the homeless people that live around the dumps, and he got talking with them and he learned their story. And he found out how they were struggling and how much of money they made. So gratefully, he put his hand in his pocket and he said, okay, let's hire a couple of these individuals. At least I can give them a day's worth of employment. They can win, but I can win as well. I can clean up, the green space that we live on. So that's where the story started with him. And about 10 years ago, we ended up meeting in the green space because I was tackling some elements of crime in the area. He was telling me how he kept the area clean as well. And he told me how much of a struggle it was in order to keep on putting his hand in his pocket in order to keep these individuals employed. And you really, when you engage with the individuals, you really feel for them because they no longer just become a homeless person or unemployed person or a street beggar. They become a human being.
And they're part of the community, very important.
They're
because
part
then
of the community.
you're not only, in that context, you're not only empowering them in terms of giving them some form of a livelihood, right? Because these, in turn, are the same people that also become an eye when you're not there.
Absolutely right. So when you actually acknowledge the person, you see them for who they are, you learn their story, you include them in your community, you give them the dignity of having a job and earning their own living. So they can decide what they want to buy to eat. They can decide if they, find somewhere to live for the night, they buy a hot meal, or use it for whatever they want. But they have the ability to make the choice for themselves. And we can't underestimate that. Okay? So when we started working together, I had some background in taxation and creating charities. I've been doing some work with an audit firm. And using that experience, I said, okay, what if we create a formalized charity? And we got some of the incentives that government gives, which is a tax certificate. If we could get people contributing money that they say they're paying their taxes for anyway, but if they can contribute the money to us and they can see us how we use the money by working with the unemployed individuals, by cleaning the community, then maybe they would feel better about giving. So this is where we created our first organization, which is called the City Zen Foundation. And City Zen is the play on we're living in the city, but we can make the city feel peaceful. We can make it Zen-like. right? And it's also a play on citizen as well. So I'm a little bit cheesy that way.
Yes, because it's a community after all,
community.
right? We are all spirit, we are also physical as well. Like what we were talking about. We are in new bodies but old souls,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And that feeling of having that balance, the zen, very important, because then what is the use of occupying that space if you don't have that little peace of mind?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what I really love about Johannesburg, and I guess it's the whole of South Africa as well. It doesn't matter what our backgrounds are, where we're from, but when we're living together, we call each other brother and sister,
Afropolitan.
Yes.
right? And that's so important to me because again, you're seeing the individual for who they are, and you've got a shared responsibility with that individual.
Yeah.
You know, when we're sharing a space, I have to be responsible for your well-being, for your safety. And I feel that by doing that for myself, I give you permission to do the same thing for me. So it has to start with us. We can't expect somebody else to start with that because you don't know their story and how they, what trauma they're living with at this point in time.
Yes.
So give people permission, start your journey. So Dan and myself put together this organization called City Zen. We started crowdsourcing more money from the community. And we eventually, back in, I would say 2015, 2016, we managed to get about 10 homeless people off the streets.
What?
We got them employed between 3 to 6 days a week. And, you know, cleaning up the green space.
That's a lot.
But it's something, right? It's not a lot for them.
No. That's a lot of days of being employed, eh?
Yeah.
Because then you find people like who are employed, but they're only employed for like a day or two.
Yeah, absolutely. So part of what we were trying to do, we became really proud of the green space that we live in, but we were wondering why it kept on getting dirty. I mean, there's a river that flows through it. So because we were proud of the green space, we didn't want it to always get dirty after there were rains. So we said, okay, let's go and investigate. Where is this dirt coming from? So we got onto the streets, we got the guys together, and we started investigating. Okay, so it's obviously the stormwater drains that empty into a river. So it must be coming from the stormwater drains. So what story does the stormwater drains hold? And when we got to the stormwater drains, we discovered, okay, there's usually taxi ranks near a stormwater drain. There's usually a kitchen that's been located there. There might be an informal vendor that has set up nearby. And we started engaging with those individuals and hearing their stories. And then just telling them our stories, saying like, we're trying to keep things clean. There's always stuff that's coming down the stormwater drain. And, you know, surprisingly enough, the guys are very open with us. They'll say, well, there's no bins here. We want to try and keep things a bit clean, so we just throw it down there.
And also people are very territorial, hence they find themselves positioned
Yep.
or stationed at that place.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like homeless people.
Yeah.
They don't live where they choose to live. They're probably running away from something or someone.
Correct. And I'll tell you a story about that. But just with regards to the informal traders, the kitchens, as well as the taxi ranks, when we got speaking to people, we found out their story was, A, they didn't know any better that throwing stuff down the stormwater drain is wrong. They don't know where it ends up. They think it's part of the sewage system. They don't know that it could block things. You know, like you said, a lot of these individuals are homeless, unemployed.
Yeah,
may
and
not-
government is supposed to clean it. That's the general consensus.
Government is supposed to clean it, right? So when you hear these stories, you kind of start building empathy with the individuals as well. Where you can't point a finger anymore and say, but yeah, you should know better. Because you learn they come from a completely different background from you. They come from a completely different community, different education level. A lot of them haven't had parents. A lot of the guys that we know that are homeless have been on the streets since they were 13 years old. They're now in their 40s. They've grown up on the streets. The streets have educated them. So they don't know that throwing something down a stormwater drain is wrong. But second to that as well, these organizations and individuals are part of our community. We don't provide them with bins. They're providing a service. They're feeding people, they're providing fruit, they're providing transportation. They're having people kind of get together around their stalls, but we don't provide them with adequate bins. So what are they supposed to do with this stuff? So when you hear these stories, this is where you now start understanding, empathizing, and you say, okay, so what can we do in order to change the narrative, to change the story? So this is something simple, just getting extra bin bags, sitting down with them at their informal vending area, and educating them and say, well, here's a bin bag. If you help keep the area clean, no questions asked, we will come and pick up
next
the...
to godliness.
Yeah, right. And also their customers, we educate them about how their customers feel about